Okay, I want to expand on the conversation we're having right now in our current series in the club. And if you were at the event, this is a continuation of that. And really, what we're doing is we're working off of this document here. And we've made a worksheet that you can fill this out. And what we talked about is the right orientation to solve problems in. Most people are solving problems over here. And I think real high performers, they start here with their principles, the things that they believe to be true. They then select frameworks that help them bridge the gap between those principles and reality. These things are typically fixed and static. They're things we believe to be true. Of course, you reserve the right to change your mind. Some of your priorities, the things that you say you want in life, that will change over time. We like to think that the frameworks don't change. They're domain independent, which means barbells is not a real estate thing. It's not a domain specific thing. Solvable problem is not a real estate thing. These are all things that are frameworks regardless of the domain, and they are true. These things will change with the terrain. And I wanted to add a couple things to maybe bring some clarity to this. So let's start with some examples. So if we want to move in this orientation, we start with our principles, then we choose the frameworks, then we choose the strategies, and then the tactics. Let me give you some examples to potentially consider. So let's say that one of your principles is that God exists. Maybe you're a religious person. Maybe you're not. Maybe you don't believe that to be true. But that's why these principles are very independent. It's very personal. You've got to decide the things that you believe to be true. So let's say that you believe God exists. Well, if that's one of your principles, then what are the different frameworks we could choose to adopt? Well, you have Christianity, you have Buddhism, you have Judaism, you have Hinduism. I mean, I could just list and list and list and list all of the different frameworks for how to bridge the fact that you believe God exists into reality. So if you choose to adopt Christianity as the framework for which you bridge your principle into reality, okay, great. Then what are the strategies that you use to practice that religion? And maybe it's going to church. Maybe it's going on mission trips. Maybe it's, again, the point is these strategies are related to the framework and then the principle before that. The tactic might be praying. It might be volunteering. It might be doing these different types of things. So that's one example, and that's how it might apply to like a religious situation. Let's look at this. Maybe one of your principles is that health is wealth. Means that like you put a tremendous amount of belief into your you want to be 80 years old and still being able to chase your grandkids around and beat them in a foot race, that sort of thing. So if you believe that as a principle you've chosen to adopt, okay, great. What's your framework then to implement that? Maybe you say like, I want to exercise 3 times a week. That's a very simple framework, admittedly, right? But it's effective. You get clear on I want to exercise 3 times a week. Of course, maybe your goal here, like this is different. So CrossFit might be a strategy for someone that maybe is trying to build muscle, or maybe like powerlifting, right? If you want to get bulked up, right? You want to put on muscle. Well, your strategy is going to be different depending on, again, your principle. Well, maybe you say health is wealth, and that means that you want to be strong. Maybe it means you want to be flexible or mobile. So exercise 3 times a week might lead you to yoga as opposed to CrossFit. You get my point. Tactical things inside of CrossFit might be pull-ups or box jumps or whatever. Those are very tactical things, but you've got to have the right orientation to this. And there's another example. Let's go through this one. So if you believe business is a team sport as a founding principle for yourself, that's how you choose to engage in the world. Well, a framework we talk a lot about is the deal triangle. So you got 3 sides of a team. In real estate, you have the funder, the people who find the deals, the people who fund the deals, and the people who operate the deals. So maybe you choose to adopt that as a framework to implement business as a team sport. And the strategy you choose to apply that to is development, and maybe one of the skills, the tactics, the tools that you choose to get really good at is underwriting. So there's another example. We'll do a couple more just to try to nail this. So let's talk about like personal goals, maybe. So your principles can are oftentimes more like things that you believe to be true about reality. You know, God exists, health is wealth, business is a team sport. But how about something like, how much money do you need to fund the life that you want? Let's say that, again, $500,000 is the goal. You're trying to make $500,000 every single year so you can live comfortably, so you can have the house that you want, you can eat out, whatever. Well, the framework that we use to apply that is the solvable problem from Dan Nicholson. We got that from him. Super effective way to take the goal that you have and break that down into how long is it going to take? Where do we need to be along the way? It's a framework for thinking about that. Maybe you choose to do this in real estate. Maybe you choose to do this in finance. Maybe you choose to do this in a professional endeavor like being a doctor or an attorney or something like that. But that's a strategy, and then you have tactical things like rentals or something like that. Last one would be, let's say that you believe service-based businesses are the fastest path to reliable income. That's something that I've chosen to adopt as a principle. I certainly believe that there's lots of ways to make money, but I think that service-based businesses are the most reliable and consistent way to earn money. So we use things like the barbell strategy and the sweet spot. Again, these aren't real estate things. This was written about in the context of trading. When I first read about the barbell strategy and heard about it from my mentors and read about it from Nassim Taleb, it's not domain specific. We choose to take that because it's the best framework to helping you build reliability and play at the highest level. Again, this is my personal situation. I've chosen to apply this in construction because that's my sweet spot. It's the type of customers that I want to work with. It all trickles down from this direction down to here. So you might think of this as very micro and this is very macro. But this is what I mean when I talk about principles, frameworks, strategies, tactics. And this order of operations is the right way to think about things. So hopefully that's helpful as we're digging into the principles that we choose to adopt, and then the frameworks we choose to bridge those principles into reality and how we actually execute it in reality. So that's what I got for today.